Good morning. Welcome to our Sunday hybrid service. We are in person and we're on Zoom. I'm Rachel Daniels, your worship associate today, and I'm really happy to be here this morning. Tomorrow, we have the possibility of rain, which is wonderful. Tuesday, we have our elections, which my heart keeps going like yowza with what's going to happen. And last night we did not win Powerball, but apparently my husband was looking online as he looked up our numbers. And I guess there's a greater chance of becoming the president of the United States than there is of winning Powerball. And I don't think either of us are going to have, well, but somebody here may. Today's sermon is titled, "What Makes America a Good Country?" And we're so lucky to have our returning guest minister, Reverend Dr. Tom Owen-Towle. We started today's service with a video on land acknowledgement. I think part of what helps us evolve as a good country is recognizing where we came from and how we got here. The video reminds us of our debt, our gratitude, rather than our entitlement, and our connections to the land and to the earth. Our fellowship sits on land that once belonged to the Juaneño and the Tongva tribes. The second video is from 2 years ago, UU the Vote, "We Shall Be Known," and it's sung by the How We Thrive virtual choir, a beautiful and inspiring song to take us to this next election day. Whenever we lead with love, we help America to be a good country. Each Sunday service is a collective effort, from scheduling the speakers, making coffee, taking care of the building, beautiful music, running sound and PowerPoint. We have a dedicated board, worship committee, and of course, anyone who comes here, gets on Zoom. This is why we come together. We are a community. Here in our building today, we have Dale, who's helping run the audio with Paul Bogdan in our building, and Don, who's running the audio and visuals from Henderson, Nevada. There's always more to do, so if you want to get involved in any of the current or upcoming projects, just reach out. We would love to have you join us and help out in anything. Don is going to put up a slide that shows our upcoming services. Next week, we have Reverend Nancy McDonald-Ladd, and Dawn ran a superb series over the summer that examined and discussed her latest book, and Dawn's going to fill us in a little bit about what's going on next week.
I'm sorry, everybody. I was prepared to share a little something about our summer series, After the Good News, with Reverend Nancy McDonald-Ladd. We did 5 weeks going over the book, discussing it, talking about how it might apply to our fellowship and our community. And a few months ago, I reached out to Reverend Ladd, and she said she would come and speak with us. She's going to be here next Sunday, 11/13. So I strongly encourage everybody that was here during the summer and everybody that wasn't to drop in and see what words she has to share with us, as we know the results of the election at that point and where we're going as a country. So it should be very interesting.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Don. So then, as you can see, on the 20th, Chris Hoff. On November 27th, we have Candace Hawes, and she's with OC Normal, and she'll give us the latest on the cannabis industry here locally, well, the industry and regulation, and just what the national as well as local trends are. And then on December 4th, we have Lawrence Ingalls, and it'll be a service with lots of music. And then we have a congregational meeting after the service, which I'll mention again in the announcements, and maybe Oakley can add a word or two about that when we get there. And now we have slides that show our upcoming announcements. Tapestry is collecting warm clothing for unhoused people in our community. And I have a handout here, or if you're interested in participating, you can send me, I'll send you the email on it, because they're looking for specific types of clothing. And if you want to drop it off here at UUFLB, Brian and I will run it up to Tapestry, or you can just take the stuff to Tapestry. And that effort is through November 27th. Camp de Benneville Pines, they have a volunteer opportunity to clear leaves for fire control, and they have a Thanksgiving celebration. I also have a handout available on those two opportunities, or you can contact Dr. Ross Quinn or the lovely Annie. Next, we have a request from CLUE, which is the Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. They sent a request that anybody interested in supporting the striking Orange County Transit Authority bus maintenance workers to visit a 24-hour picket line or write a letter to the OCTA execs and board. And I also have a handout on the locations as well as where to send the letters. Or again, you can just email me and I will forward you the information. We also have people that feed the homeless on the first Thursday of each month with other congregations. And we have Paul Candy here that can fill anybody in on that effort. And now it's December 4th after the service, the congregational meeting on the revised bylaws for our congregation. And e-blast was already went out. And then I don't know if Oakley wants to say a few words about that meeting.
Yeah, our bylaws provide that we'll review our bylaws every 5 years to see if they need to be updated, and ours certainly do need. Our congregation is much smaller than it was when the bylaws were adopted, so these proposed amendments will simplify them and make it more efficient, more effective for us to operate. Reduces the board from 7 to 5 members. And provides for electronic voting at meetings and really brings us up to date. So it's important that we adopt them, and your votes are needed. So hope you'll be there and vote to adopt them. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Oakley, can we vote by Zoom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The notice that went out, I thought, made that clear that you can both attend and vote. Members only can vote, but members can vote by Zoom.
Thank you, Oakley. And lastly, just another meeting that we hold or a way to get together. We have Zoom at noon, and it's hosted by Paul Bogdan. And the last time we met, it was Halloween. And of course, everybody's welcome to join in on Zoom at noon. And during that meeting, a photo was requested. And so that's the photo. People wanted to see the grandkids in their costumes, and those are Brian and my grandkids. And Haven's our daughter, she did their face makeup. Our main doctrine in Unitarian Universalism is love. We are the church of the open mind, loving heart, and helping hand. We care about you and accept you for who and what you are, and we recognize that we all have our unique spiritual journey. We share the values of the 7 principles that you use, affirm, and promote. And Don has a really pretty 7 principles slide that he put together. This morning, our guest minister, Reverend Tom, in his sermon, asks us to consider what makes America a good country. We're in the midst of another election cycle, and whatever the results, we still need to remind ourselves what makes America a good country. I think today's sermon touches on all of our principles as we strive to create a just, compassionate, inclusive, equal opportunity, and ever-evolving good country. Reverend Tom has been a parish minister since 1967 and is the author of 24 books on various topics of personal growth, social compassion, perspective on topics of progressive religion, partnership, gender justice, parenting, and citizenship in the global family. Reverend Tom continues to conduct workshops and retreats on the core themes of his written works, especially on conscious aging and mindful dying. Reverend Tom's latest book, which I just purchased, is Making Peace with Our Own Death. And that's available through the UUA Bookstore. And of course, for those of you who are here, you can pick up a copy at the table in the back. And I hope that everyone stays after the service, and Reverend Tom will be available for a short time to answer any questions that we may have. And now for our chalice lighting. Everywhere on Sunday mornings, Unitarians light the chalice. And if you have a candle at home, please feel free to grab it and you can light the chalice as we light ours, and I read the chalice lighting words. These words are from Reverend Eric Cherry, and I got them from the UUA website. The chalice is lit in our hearts each time that we ask for vision, long for healing, forgive our enemies, comfort our neighbors, and prepare for justice's day. In its light, our hope and compassion are renewed, and the promises that bind each of us to all become clear. Now, by its sacred flame, the path before us is brightened. Love prepares our way. Harmony is in view. There is no east or west, no south or north. Only a world to greet and bestow with more light and more love.
I invite us to join together in sharing our centering thought. Words were composed by the social activist and great singer, Paul Robeson. You can unmute yourself as we share it in unison. I shall take my voice wherever there are those who want to hear the melody of freedom, or the words that inspire hope,
and
the
courage,
and
fear,
and fear are peaceful.
Weapons are
My
peaceful.
weapons
Only by
weapons
peace
For it is
peaceful.
only
It's
by
only
For it is
peace
It is
only by
by
peace
peace
can be
that
attained.
peace can be
can
attained.
be attained.
Oh, stop.
So Brian, I want to hear you singing out loud. And it's hymn 119, once to every soul and nation. So I will play you an introduction and please join me. Once to every soul and nation comes the moment to decide in the strife of truth with falsehood, and for good or evil side. Then to stand with truth is noble when we share the wretched crust. Ere that cause brings fame and proof it, and 'tis prosperous
Thank you, Carol. That was really beautiful. Okay, now please unmute. And we'll look at the screens and we'll read together the short affirmation to remind ourselves why we come together. And we'll be reading this together. Love,
Love
is the
is the
spirit
of this fellowship.
fellowship.
service.
Service
Service
is
is
law.
law.
This
This is our
great
great covenant.
dwell
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 together.
together in peace,
Seek
To seek
Seek
the
truth,
truth
and love
and
and
to
to
help
help
one
one
another.
one
another.
another.
Our responsive reading today comes from Martin Luther King Jr. These were words that he shared at our General Assembly in Florida a few years before he was assassinated in 1968. So let us read it responsively.
You've heard this from me many times.
We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny.
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Some things in our social system to which all of us ought to be maladjusted.
Hatred and
Bitterness
can
can
never
never
cure
cure the disease of fear.
Only
Love can do that.
We must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation.
The
Foundation of such a method is love.
Before it is too late, we must narrow the gaping chasm between our proclamations of peace and our lowly deeds, which precipitate and perpetuate war.
One day,
we
we
must
come to see that peace is merely a distant goal that we seek,
but a
but a
means
means by which we arrive at that goal.
Ends through peaceful means.
We shall hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope.
Now is a time for spoken joys and sorrows. And we'll start with people on Zoom. If anyone wants to share, Don will highlight you and we'll go ahead and share anything that's on your heart.
Unitarian congregation in Prague, which my life mate Carolyn and I have personally visited. Prague, our congregation, suffered directly at the hands of the communist government, as well as being sabotaged regularly by inside traitors. And in Romania, our Transylvanian Unitarian sisters and brothers have been doubly persecuted as both an ethnic and a religious minority, even until this day. And our religious kin in the Philippines suffer bigotry as well. Furthermore, sometimes the in-resident religion is not only fundamentalist, but also politicized, as tragically evidenced today throughout the Middle East. Yet we could hardly say, could we, that religious freedom has been fully achieved in America. It hasn't. Certain religious groups have been treated badly in this country. The histories of anti-Catholicism and anti-Semitism sorely illustrate that. And the boost, the upgrade, the upsurge in anti-Semitism in our country, even as I speak, sorely illustrate that we have not embodied and ensouled religious freedom to the utmost. And we Unitarian Universalists have been the target of our own share of discrimination and exclusion, despite our modest size. And there remain those, of course, who still clamor for America, not only to be a theocracy, but a Christian one at that. And numbers, as we know, of self-described Christian white nationalists are currently running for various political offices throughout our land. We need to continue to bring up our children in the belief that one may worship or not worship as he or she or they choose, and that whatever the choice, one can still be a first-rate American. I contend that we liberal religionists are as pro-life, pro-family, and pro-morality as any fundamentalists. And we must enter the political fray and promote vigorously yet respectfully our own views of human freedom and inclusion and dignity. For Unitarian Universalists are convinced that good religion and good government mean promoting a sense of pluralism, not favoritism, a sense of persuasion, not coercion or violence, a sense of mediating moral language, not alienating jargon, a sense of humility, not arrogance, about our ultimate beliefs and actions. Furthermore, some of us believe that to achieve and sustain these ideals for our country, we must subordinate ourselves for the good of the whole. In other words, sacrifice some. Sacrifice through taxes to properly educate our young. Sacrifice through community service as volunteers. Sacrifice social and economic entitlements when we don't need them. Simply sacrifice some. Sacrifice some of our personal freedoms in service of a healthy environment, a fairly educated population, and a just society. As Viktor Frankl sagely recommended, we need the Statue of Liberty on the East Coast to be supplemented by the Statue of Responsibility here on the West Coast. And what if before entering the voting booth during any election time, or if you do it by mail or however, but think of the booth and someone's there to say to you, okay, my fellow citizen, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to vote for the common good of this land over your own private interests? So help you God, or whatever ultimate power drives your heart and soul. That's not just a radical or novel idea. The common good is a core principle upon which our country was founded. A second mark of the American dream is our unswerving commitment to patriotic diversity, which flows directly from our commitment to religious and civic freedoms. Today's political orthodoxy to the contrary. There's no single, perfect, pure way to be a patriot. That is a lover of and a loyalist to one's country. There are many ways, including yours and mine. So our UU congregations try to furnish a house of forthright opinion and wide embrace, welcoming a potpourri of patriots. All our religion ever demands in return is that we wear our patriotism honorably and express it respectfully. Diversity reigns supreme in our theology and ethics. Why shouldn't it reign in our politics and behaviors? Patriotic integrity summons every American to action, be it serving our country abroad or at home. True patriots are always on duty, not simply lounging on couches. Patriots refrain from turning their minds over to the media or officials or anyone else. And yes, patriots carry on a lover's quarrel with their homeland. Some 50 plus years ago, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., as I said earlier, spoke at our Unitarian Universalist General Assembly in Florida. This was but a few years before he was killed. And he said, "I'm proud to be a creatively maladjusted American, because until the good society is realized, I remain creatively maladjusted." But the road remains long and hard, doesn't it? Given today's voter suppression efforts throughout our land. And the word from a recent person running for election, that if he and his party are elected, they will be elected ongoingly forever. And given the electoral college debate, wouldn't it be wondrous if Congress deigned to make Election Day a national holiday, wherein there's automatic voter registration, universal mail-in ballots available to everyone to vote? What's to argue with that? But we've got to do everything possible to address the apathy of our citizenry. In fact, our nation on the whole sports one of the lowest voter turnouts of any country. That won't do. We're better than that. There's a resurgence of civic engagement among our 20-somethings. My wife and I have connected vigorously with four of our grandchildren who are in their 20s or of voting age. Encourage them not to vote a particular way. They know who we are, but to get out and vote. But you know what? There was a recent college graduate, 23 years of age, who said, "I don't care enough to care about why I don't care." The best cure for the ills of democracy is always more democracy. The last election, a couple of years ago, I was visiting my dermatologist for more skin cancer surgery. And Dr. Lerner's assistant, a young woman, I thought of voting age. I said, I hope, we'll call her Gertrude, I hope, Gertrude, you're going to be voting at the next election. She said, I don't know. I said, "Do you need a ride? Do you need a ride?" The third cornerstone of what makes America truly America is our commitment not to prowess, but to goodness. Not to conquest, but to restoration. As with religious freedom and patriotic diversity, compassionate service hasn't always been our accomplishment, but it remains our aspiration as a core tenet of our American dream. Furthermore, our humanitarian record, both at home and abroad, as with many other countries, but it's not our job to critique other lands, but to clean up our own side of the street. It's been checkered in recent history. Yet it remains our democratic duty as Americans, working collaboratively with others to restabilize politically and economically any regions of the world that maybe we've chosen to assault. After all, aren't justice and mercy core American ideals? Isn't humanitarianism central to our way of being Americans? Or is compassion merely a platitude, or a political ploy, or a policy reserved for our own people? Oh, I hope not. I simply want a good government and a good president who will motivate the rest of our citizenry to be good enough individuals. I've long since given up the illusion that presidents must be perfect or even great. So we'd be far better off if we quit focusing upon all the hype about America being great and just work on being a pretty darn good country, always needing to get better. And good not as in power or splendor or wealth, but good is in practicing justice and freedom at home for one and for all. And when we've sufficiently cleaned up our own side of the street, then being good in our willingness to model our best values abroad. And with all the talk about the possible reinstatement of the military draft, I say, let the United States require that every citizen, every young woman and man, every young person, give at least 2 years. I think it should be more, but let's say 2 years of national duty to be spent in delivering services, providing training, education, or otherwise assisting in compassionate national or global service. I know I could have benefited from such patriotic service myself. And I can think of no greater challenge and blessing for our own grandchildren and for our one great grandchild. Now that's something of what I mean by being a good nation. Let's stop worrying about leading the world and let's start by joining it. And then with greater humility, we can possibly play a wiser and more compassionate role. Someday soon, it appears to this patriot that if we're true to our American way of life, to our path of freedom and diversity and compassion, we must say no more innocent deaths at home or abroad. Someday soon, America's conscience will be goaded to wage peace home and abroad. Someday soon, our espoused character will push us to lay down roads, to dig wells of clean water where people can safely drink, to build hospitals and schools, to teach hygiene and sexual ethics and mathematics, and inoculate against disease and battle malnutrition, treat people of different colors and orientations and classes fairly at home and abroad. Someday soon. In our lifetime, in my lifetime, unlikely. I'm 81. But someday soon. Someday soon we will truly ask ourselves, what in the world today most breaks our hearts and offends our sense of justice? And we will join with others who are committed to transforming that injustice a little bit every day. Someday soon. Someday soon. For deep down, as we Americans well know, if we're truly interested in making any corner of the world safe for freedom and democracy, then we've got to unleash weapons of mass construction, are unique, are powerful, our finest American weapons, opportunity and justice, education and hope, religious freedom and patriotic diversity and compassionate service. That sounds too upbeat. So be it. For I belong to a life-affirming, this-worldly, hopeful religion. All I want is for my homeland to be a pretty darn good country. A pretty darn good country. And once to every soul and nation comes the moment to decide for the good or evil side.
Please join me in This Is My Song. And it's number 159. If you all have a book at home, we're here. This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thy God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
Thank you. We'll now extinguish the chalice. Do not be dismayed by the brokenness of the world. All things break, and all things can be mended, not with time, as they say, but with intention and action. So go, dream, act, and love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world awaits in darkness for the light that is you, the light that is us.
Our benediction comes to us from the poet Adrian Rich. Let us unmute and share it in unison. My heart
My
is
heart
moved
is
by
moved
all I
moved
cannot
by all I
say.
cannot say.
So much has
So
been
much has
destroyed.
been destroyed.
Have to
I
cast
have
Have
to
lots
cast
cast
my
lot
lot
with those
those
who
who age after
age
age
perversely,
perversely
with
with
no
no
extraordinary
extraordinary
extraordinary power
constitute
reconstitute the world.
Now we will join our hearts and our voices in song. And if you can, please stand. We'll be singing our closing song, Let There Be Peace on Earth, with a lot of hope and love for Tuesday's elections outcome.
Let
Let there be peace on earth,
Earth,
and let
let
it
it
begin
begin
with
with
me.
let
Let there be
there
peace
peace
on
on earth,
earth.
the peace
that
of
is
Was
bound to be with
with
earth
earth as our
as our mother.
mother. We
We
are
are
family.
family. Let
Let
us
us
walk
walk
with
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 each
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 other
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 in
in
perfect
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 harmony.
harmony.
Let
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 peace
peace
begin
begin
with
with
me.
me.
Let
Let
this
let
this
be
this
be
my
be the
home
moment
and
and
now.
now. my day. Let this be my song
To
to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Have a lovely day.